Hi students, this is Mr. Yao. In this lesson, we are going to review the order operations and fraction operations. Let's start with order operation, which is something you have been learning for many years. So PEMDAS. P stands for, let's actually go over each letter. P stands for parentheses. E stands for exponents, so for example, like 2 to the third power. M stands for multiplication, D stands for division, A stands for addition, and S stands for subtraction. There may be cases where you have parentheses and exponent kind of together. So you kind of have to deal with them together. So let's have a look at a few examples. Example 1. We have parentheses around -5 and also around -9. However, -5 has an exponent, but -9 is just a number, which means in that case, we can easily just get rid of the parentheses. So that part is the same as a -2 times just a -9 without parentheses. Next, let's actually deal with the numbers. -5 being squared, you gotta be careful. The negative is inside the parentheses with the 5. So this is actually -5 times -5. The square is actually on -5, so we have to repeat the -5 twice, not just the 5. So -5 times -5 is a positive 25. And then we have the -2 times -9, which is a positive 18. We also have a plus 6 on the end. So 25 plus 18 plus 6, that is 49. Next, number 2. We have parentheses around -9 and -8. And we also have the exponent on the back, so we got to deal with the parentheses first. When it's just around a number, we can choose to ignore it, so get rid of it. But then we have a minus -8 with parentheses, so now we actually need to take it out of the parentheses and turn it into a positive. On the back, I do want to mention about this 2 times 4 squared. So 2 times 4 squared is different than 2 times 4 inside parentheses squared, because the bottom one is actually 2 times 4 first, which is 8, then being squared to be a 64. However, the top one, the square is only on the 4, and then you multiply it with a 2. So we actually have a 2 times, that is a 4 squared, which is 16. So we have a -9 plus 8, this is 32 plus 32. The whole thing is 31. That's number 2. Now I'm going to ask you to pause here to try example 3, example 4, and example 5. Hopefully you have tried, so let's have a look. Number 3. We have parentheses around -3 and also around -8. But it's just a number on the back, so that is the same as without the parentheses. So it's actually 8 divided by -8. In the front, we still have -3 inside the parentheses. So this is actually negative sign included being repeated 3 times. So it's -3 times -3 times -3, which is a -27. We have a -2 on the back. We have to deal with the division before we actually do the addition and subtraction. 8 divided by -8 is a -1. So altogether, we have -27 minus 2 minus 1, which is a -30. Next, number 4. So we have parentheses, the first set of parentheses, then it's being multiplied with the second set of parentheses, which also has an exponent. So we can kind of deal with them at the same time. So the one on the back, -10 being squared, that is just 100. The one in the front, well, there are several different layers of parentheses. There are 3 layers. We typically deal with them in the inner layer first. So we got to deal with that -3 and the -9. So 2, well, minus a -3 becomes a +3. Then plus a -9, it's still a -9. So we have dealt with the inner layer. Now we still have the parentheses around the 2 and on the back of 9. And we still have the 4 divided in the front with another layer of parentheses. Now, the inner layer again, 2 plus 3 minus 9, which is a -4. So now we still have the 4 divided by a -4, and they're still inside parentheses. But we can just calculate it. That is -1. The number on the back is 100. So the whole thing is going to be -100. That is number 5. And number 4. Number 5. Same thing. We have the first set of parentheses and then the second set of parentheses. We got to deal with them separately. Let's deal with the one on the back first. -3 being squared. That is just a +9 divided by 9. They're still inside parentheses, but that is just going to end up being a 1. Whatever that is, we got a 1, then we're going to need to multiply it with the whole front. So now let's deal with the front. -10 is inside parentheses, -7 is inside parentheses. We're going to need to take them out. Still remains a -10. We have a +2. minus -7 is the same as a plus 7. The inside parentheses, -10 plus 2 plus 7 is a -1. Now, the first set of parentheses come out to be a -1. The second set of parentheses come out to be a 1. We multiply them. The final answer is just a -1. That is number 5. Next, we are going to review about fractions. First, because in the future you may not always just have numbers, you may have questions like, say, 3x over 5 and then minus 2x over 9. So you do still need to know how to work with fractions. But for some later examples, we are going to use our our calculators to help us. For number 6, whenever you're adding or subtracting fractions, you always need common denominator. So in this case, 5 and 9, their common denominator is going to be 45. So I can multiply the first fraction top and bottom by 9, and the second fraction top and bottom by a 5. I'm going to end up with a 45 as the denominator. On the top, 3 times 9 is 27, minus, the bottom is another 45, 2 times 5 is 10. So, since we actually have the common denominator now, I am just going to keep the bottom, 45. I'm not subtracting these two numbers. So it's 45, the top is 27 minus 10, which is a 17. And that cannot be simplified, so it is our final answer already. Next, number 7. Same thing. We're going to need to find a common denominator between 9 and 6. So if you can quickly find the least common denominator, sure, go for it, which is actually going to be 18. But you don't have to use that number, because we just need a common denominator, and at the very end, we're going to need to simplify the answers no matter what. So in that case, we can always just multiply the denominators. So in this case, we can easily just use 54. Multiply the first fraction by 6 on the top and the bottom. Multiply the second one by 9 on the top and the bottom. So in that case, we have 54 as the denominator. On the top is -42. And then we're subtracting the second, which is a 54 on the bottom again. The top is a 5 times 9, which is a 45. So altogether, 54 remains as the denominator. On the top, it is a -42 minus 45, which is a -87. One thing I do want to mention, you can write the answer as -87 over 54, or you can just write it as a negative in the front, then 87 over 54, or you can actually do 87 over -54. They're all the same. Doesn't matter where you put the negative sign, as long as you have one negative sign for the whole fraction. That is example 7. Next, example 8. This time, let's actually type into the calculator. So for this year, we're using a different calculator, which is TI-84 plus. So let's actually use it. For number 8, when we type fractions, we're actually doing it as division. So -1/5, that is the same as -1 divided by 5. That's how we actually type it. So let's have a look. Negative sign is right there. Is next to the dot. So you got to be careful. That's a negative sign. On the calculator is different than subtraction, even though when we're actually dealing with questions, they're kind of the same. So -1 divided by 5. That's how we type in -1 divided by 5. Then plus 2 divided by 7. Then minus 2 divided by 3. And that is going to give us a decimal. Next, we're going to need to press math. So math, and then we're going to choose the first one. That is going to change our answers into fractions. For this year, unless specified, we are going to always get the fraction answers without rounding, because that's more precise. So we're going to choose the first one, and now it's going to give us the fraction. So number 8 is -61 over 105. Okay, now please try with example 9. Hopefully you have tried. Let's type it in. -7 over 8 minus 2 divided by 9 plus 4 divided by 5. Some of you might be like, wait, what happens if I actually do a negative sign in the front? Well, I mean a subtraction sign in the front. You're going to get an error message, and then you do need to actually use the negative sign. So enter. We're still getting a decimal answer. Now I can just press math and choose the first one, change the answer to a fraction, which is -107 divided by 360. Okay, now for number 10, you can also type in your calculator. Let's actually do some quick calculation. So For multiplication, we do not need a common denominator. We're just multiplying across. 3 times 55, which is 165. 4 times 12 is 48. But then we do actually need to simplify our fractions. The top and the bottom could both divide a 3. So that means our final answer is going to be 55 over 16. Okay, let's also type it in our calculator to see what that's going to do. So into our calculator, we have 3 divided by 4 times 55 divided by 12. And press enter. You get decimal again, math, and fraction. You can see it directly gives us 55 over 16. So our calculator is going to simplify the answers for us. That will make things a bit easier. Okay, next, let's type in our calculator. 9 divided by 2 times 5 divided by 6, which is 3.75 changed into a fraction. That is going to be 15 over 4. There you go. Okay, now let's actually do more. We also have division we're going to need to work with. So question number 12. First, whenever you see a whole number that does not look like a fraction, we are going to typically put it with a 1 under it. That will change it into a fraction. Whenever we do division, we're actually not doing division. We are going to need to change it into multiplication. So this question is the same as 2 over 1 times 7 over 2. Just a reminder, the 7 over 2 compared to the 2 over 7, that has a name for it, which is called reciprocal. Reciprocal. Okay, so we typically need to change division into multiplication and multiply by the reciprocal. And then we just multiply across. 2 times 7 is a 14. 1 times 2 is a 2. Final answer is a 7. Now, something I do want you to try with your calculator is, let's say you want to type this into your calculator. You maybe type it in as 2 divided by, and then you see, oh, it's a 2 divided by 7. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, let's see what your calculator is going to give you. 2 divided by 2 divided by 7. Your calculator gives you a decimal. Let's change to a fraction. You see the fraction answer is going to be 1/7. But wait, our answer is a 7. And we for sure did it right. So how come we can't actually do it with our calculator? Well, here's the issue. When you type in 2 divided by 2 divided by 7, what your calculator is doing is 2 divided by 2 first, which is the 1. And then it's going to use a 1 divided by 7. Then, of course, the answer is 1/7. However, when you type this into your calculator, since you want a 2 to divide 2/7 altogether, we're going to need to divide 2/7 inside parentheses. So now let's try it. 2 divided by parentheses, 2 divided by 7. Parentheses back. And now you see the answer is actually going to be a 7. So whenever you are doing division, make sure you put the fractions inside parentheses. Otherwise, it won't be right because it's division and it works a bit differently compared to multiplication. Okay, number 13. Well, that looks like a very complicated question, but here's what it is. Something you need to understand, the fraction line is actually a division symbol. So when we actually do this question, it's just division. It is the same as 15 over 2 divided by a 3/8. So let's try it with our calculator. We do need to make sure we actually type in the parentheses. So it's going to be parentheses 15 divided by 2, parentheses back, and then divided by parentheses again, 3 divided by 8, and parentheses back. That is going to be a 20. So we can also just check by hand 15 over 2 times 8/3. Again, we got to use the reciprocal for it. We get 120 on the top and a 6 on the bottom, which is a 20. Great. So that's 13. Now let's actually try to do it with all the rest of the questions. 14, parentheses, 33 divided by 6, parentheses back, divided by 11 divided by 6. And that is going to give us a 3. Okay. So again, make sure you put parentheses when you're typing division into our calculators. Next, 47. Oh, parentheses, forgot about parentheses, so we gotta go back. Parentheses 47 divided by 8. And then divided by parentheses 11 over 4. Parentheses back. Press enter. That is going to give us a decimal. We want the fraction, so let's change the answer into a fraction, which is 47 over 22. That is 15. 16. Again, this is just division. This fraction symbol in the middle, it's just a division sign. You actually have 21 over 4 divided by 35 over 12. So let's do it. Parenthesis 21 divided by 4, parenthesis back, divided by, parenthesis 35 divided by 12, parenthesis back, press enter. It's a decimal. Let's change it into a fraction. And that is going to be 9/5. One more thing, we will never actually get mixed number as an answer anymore. We will always just keep the improper fractions. There we go. So that's all the review for order operation and fraction operations. Thank you.